have to accept what happened to us. This is what life is. And staying angry and resentful and bitter towards our parents is a recipe for, if you just surrendered, if you gave your total faith in life, if you didn't have to control anything, what are you afraid is going to happen? What might happen? What's the image you have of what would happen?
Everything's uncertain. How much is enough money? Right? For everyone, for myself, how much is enough money?
Yeah.
Somatic healing.
Yeah.
Can you define that for me?
Well, I guess it's the idea that the emotions are stored in our body.
Yes.
And so they're somewhere in there. And somatic healing, the intention of it is to locate, make connection with where it exists in the body. So essentially the body works as the unconscious mind. So if you're talking to somebody in psychotherapy, it's all cognitive.
Yes.
You're just talking. And so you can understand what I call the math of your problem. You can see what happened in your childhood, and then you can make the connection between what happened in your childhood and how that influenced you as an adult. And that cognitive understanding is very useful. But that doesn't necessarily interrupt the patterns, because the feelings that the child experienced and that they had to repress or disassociate from are still there. They're in the body and in the unconscious. And so you want to work with the body to liberate those feelings, which will expand the consciousness and the awareness. And in my experience, the only way to really do that is through the body. So I've had experiences in the work that I do, core energetics, which is, I'm hitting, punching, kicking, and going all the way into it. And all of a sudden it unlocks all of these memories and feelings that I had no idea were there.
Because they were suppressed.
It was suppressed. And it's like, so it was almost like this energy came up through the body, came out of me, and that gave me this awareness or memory of what actually fucking happened. Because what happened was so painful, right? So scary that I left myself. I disassociated. And for me, I remember an experience in a workshop, it was around my father. And my mother left my father when I was 6 and he wasn't around. My dad was a hockey player. Not a professional, but that's how I remembered him, as a hockey player. And I was getting all my anger, like, fuck you, where were you? And that took me to the longing, the pain, like I missed you. And then suddenly I started sobbing uncontrollably, the kind of sobbing where you're shaking, like you lose control. And it just came out of me, this thought that I'd never had before. Which was, you never saw me play. I play hard for you. Oh. And I did not have a memory of him not seeing me play. So I've been holding on to that my entire life. This pain about my father never having me see me play hockey. And every time I stepped out of the ice, and I played like an animal. And I just thought that's who I am. I play hard. But it was a kind of intensity that was a little strange. And I realized that every time I stepped out on the ice, I was playing to win the love of my father. That is not a conscious thought I ever had. And once I understood that, it's like, what else am I doing in my life to win the love of my father or my mother? And my whole, framework of reality began to unravel. And I started to look at all the things that I was doing in my life, the relationships I was in, the career that I'd chosen. And I started to understand that all of it, on some level, was motivated by these unconscious feelings, this desire to resolve something that was unresolved.
I want to jump in and say thank you for listening and supporting the show, as at the moment we don't run any ads on the show. And if you're getting value, if you're loving the show, then I invite you right now to share this episode. Share this directly to a friend or share it on your socials. And when you do share it on social, please tag me so I can personally say thank you to you. My social handle is @Chris Dufey. That's Chris, D-U-F-E-Y, as it means a huge deal to me, as this show is about us coming together as a community to help each other grow, as I really do believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So take your screenshot, grab the link and share it with a friend that you think could get value out of this together. It will put a huge smile on my face and I very much appreciate it.
Does that make sense?
That makes Great sense. Thank you for that. That really does help me. For myself, my parents were both 17 when I was born. And like they say to me, we grew up together, and we have an amazing relationship, and I like love and adore them, and incredible. But what has come up for me, especially through psychotherapy and then a bunch of other work, was I felt like I wasn't meant to be in this world. Like I wasn't wanted.
You weren't wanted.
I wasn't wanted
by them
to be in this world.
It was just a feeling you had.
It was a feeling, and it was like going back into that stuff. It gives me goosebumps when I speak about it, because they never said that, and I don't think they ever consciously really thought that. But I think obviously in that state of being so young and being this love, and I know as well through conversations with my parents, where it was like their parents were like, this can't happen, like this is crazy. But then there were some supportive family members. But if I was to put myself back in that position, I was like, that's a scary position to be in. And subconsciously, did my mother not want me to come through?
Yeah.
And it was interesting peeling that onion back and being like, okay, like, how does that affect me today?
Yeah.
And how have I been able to move past certain things and be able to unravel that and be free of it, if that's a right statement? If, like, and pull me up with the language that I use with this, please.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And so then it was a case of me feeling in debt, or me feeling like I had to prove myself to be worthy.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest, I don't want to cast spells upon myself with the words that I use, but I feel like I used to very much feel unworthy and not enough. That were the things that kept coming from me. And when I look back into my life now, is incredible. I'm so grateful for the life that I live. Like, I truly believe like I've been able to really create this amazing, abundant life. But why? What was driving it?
Right.
Like, what caused me to be so focused?
Right.
And to work harder than anyone else.
Right.
And like, so many people were like, Chris, you're so disciplined. And I'm like, for me, it's who I am now. And I very much graciously accept this man that I've created today. But what's that deep, dark stuff behind that caused me to do the things that I know so many other people did not do?
Yeah.
What comes up for you when I say this? David, what's going on?
Well, it's common. You know, the unwanted child is one of the 5 character structures in core energetics, in the Reichian model. We call it schizoid, and it's a very young, wounded place where a child is either ignored, or they feel unwanted, or they were hated. And that's a strong word, but that happens. And just as you said, very often parents are extremely overwhelmed, and a child represents an enormous burden sometimes, and so the child can feel unwanted. And in that place, that's very scary. I mean, imagine how scary it must be when you are a vulnerable, helpless child. You can't take care of yourself. And your caregivers, you sense, you feel on some psychic level that they don't love you, that they don't care about you, that they don't want you. Well, that gets internalized, right? It's terrifying. You have to disassociate from that terror, and then you have to figure out a way to survive, right? And clearly the way you survived was, I'm gonna fucking go out, I'm gonna get what I want, I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna prove my worth, I'm gonna prove that I'm worthy of existence. And then very often, and this is my story, you get to that place, you get everything you want, and it's great, but there's something missing, right? And very often that's the time that people go on some kind of healing journey to figure out what is this thing that is missing. And they discover that, oh, I was being motivated by this unconscious force, by this desire to prove myself in some way, to win the love of my parents, to prove my existence, something. And I'm not really free. I'm actually not free. I'm not making real decisions. What is it that I really want.
Okay. Oh, shit. Okay. You just hit the nail on the head. Dave, you're really good. This is great. So I briefly said, I think before we hit record, like the last 10 years for me has been this chapter of very much, we've created this incredible family. I've lived around the world, have homes around the world. I'm build businesses, sold the company, in this fantastic position that I am today.
Yeah.
Awesome, Chris. Yeah, yay. Do you know what I mean? But I've been thinking, what was that incentive? What was that motivation that was driving those forces there as well? And it was very interesting because I'm not joking. I think it must have been a week, 2 weeks ago, where I had a session with a lady, but something came up and it was like, quite literally for the first time in my life, I've now said, what does Chris want?
Right.
And I was like, ooh. And intellectually, and I want to dive into this further because I feel like on an intellectual level, I can be extremely strong and I can be great to be able to piece things together. But I also think that can lead to a bunch of self-deception.
Yeah.
Or I even reread Harry Frankfurt's essay on bullshit. Do you know what I mean? Like, am I really good at bullshitting myself?
Yeah.
Because I can like intellectually justify certain things, but am I really getting to the depths of the core of my feelings or what's going on to be able to answer, what does Chris want?
Yeah.
So when I say that, David, what would be your advice or guidance for myself, because I'm just going to be a selfish prick right now, and hopefully the listener can pick up everything as well. How do I answer that question? What does Chris want? Because, sorry, and if I can just preface one more thing, I also feel like I don't want to fall prey to, say, like Rene Girard's like mimetic theory. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, I don't want to have mimesis be the thing that causes me to think I want something. So what do I want? What I want is what I'm probably really trying to point at.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the mind will rationalize. The mind is very, very tricky. The mind wants to keep us away from feeling. It wants to keep us away from going inside those deep places inside ourselves because it doesn't feel safe, right? And so, you know, if you felt that you were unwanted, that tells me that as a child you must have been terrified. And you probably did everything that you could to avoid ever having to feel that again. That would be the rational choice. I never want to feel that again, so I'm going to set up a life where I feel safe, right? So you went out, you were successful, you made a lot of money, you have a big family, you're safe, right? And so you resolved that problem, but that problem was the defense, right? That was the defense against the feeling. And so to really get free, you'd have to go into that terror that child must have felt. Now, you may not be connected to that. You may be sitting there going, I don't have any terror. I'm not afraid. But you couldn't remember it. You disassociated from it at such a young age, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, somewhere in there if you felt that. And so you'd want to be able to invite that back, right? And what is the evidence for that? I'm sure there is evidence for that in some ways. Like, usually in our behavior patterns, we can find ways that things that are manifestations of our fear, right? And so just be very, very gently to begin to invite that fear, that little boy that lives inside you, that almost the infant, and to go back and revisit and ask them questions. How is it for you? What do you need? You know, like to take their hand, because they were kind of, all of us have a little child inside us that's locked in a cave, terrified, right? And it doesn't know anything else. The door is open, right? But they don't know any other world. So our responsibility as adults is to go down and take their hand and slowly bring them into the real world and show them that it is safe now. Now, they're not going to believe you. Why would they? They've never seen it out there. All they know is pain and fear and anger, probably, because if you're locked down into, in a cave, in a cage inside, you probably also have a lot of rage about that. Just the organism itself respond to negation, to neglect with rage.
Hola, I want to say a big thank you, muchas gracias, for listening to the show. Now, really quickly, this show is growing and it's all thanks to the ratings and reviews. So really quickly, I want to ask, if you have not left a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else that you listen, take the 30 seconds, please click on over, leave a review, as I really want to hear from you. And I want to know what is the best thing so I can cover in future episodes, what guests to bring in, what questions can I answer for you, what is it that you're getting out of being a part of this show as well. And I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this show's success. Thank you so much for clicking over, leaving a review. Now let's get back to the episode.
Can I speak to that just for a second? So there was a somatic trauma release lady that I did some work with. I think I've seen every type of healer or someone and woo for all sorts of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's been super interesting. There was let's just call it whatever. You probably have a better name for the label that sort of work is. But anyway, I was on the floor, she was doing her thing, and we were going through the process, and something happened. I've never thought of myself as an angry person or really having anger. Like even in like training kickboxing or any of those sorts of things, like I felt like there was a switch I could flick and I can like turn on that power that was able to like emote, do you know what I mean? That fierce energy, but not anger. Like, I don't think I've really ever been like angry. Anyway, in this session, I remember there was blood curdling rage that then came out of me. And I could not believe the rage and anger that came out of me. I couldn't speak for about a day after it because my throat was just like, it was just spent. It was just absolutely burnt from what came out. And I found that really interesting. And God fucking damn it, I felt good after it as well though. Like something had just been like lighter, like I'd let go of something. And it was like, oh, I don't need that anymore. And it had gone. And then it was very interesting because I think, and I'd love to talk about like inner child work, because I think that's been some of the most interesting work that I've gone through myself as well. And so for me, when I think of my inner child, he's always here to my left. He's always here. And it's interesting whether, depending on which age, I try and tap and connect into as well. And for me, it was this lack of guidance that I had, this wanting and this urge and this desire for someone to be like, yeah, you are on the right path, Chris. You are doing the right thing. Like this is all.
You're okay.
You're okay. That was something that's been profound for me.
Yeah, you're okay. That's what we all want to hear. It's like, you're okay, exactly where you are, exactly as you are. I mean, that's how we heal. We have to accept ourselves exactly as we are. If we want to change the world, you have to accept it as it is. That's a very hard thing to do because we judge things. And then we try to change the world based on that judgment. The same thing we do to ourselves. There's something I don't like about myself, and I want to change it to make myself better, to make myself more likable, to make myself more successful, to make, but it's motivated by insecurity, right? So we want to be able to, like, are you willing? The question is for all of us. This is not a question for you, but for everyone. Are you willing to accept yourself exactly as you are, where you are right now? Because whatever behavior you have that you don't like is not an indictment on your character. That's a defense against something that happened in your childhood. Underneath that is unresolved pain and fear and rage. That's what's going on. So we have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves. The child did what they had to do to survive. And now we're acting out on that in our adult world, and it's causing us self-sabotage and suffering and relationship issues and all kinds of things. But it's about the defense, right? So we have to let ourselves off the hook. We have to see it for what it is. Because if we're in condemnation and judgment, right, then we're changing in reaction to that. And we're just going to create a whole nother set of problems if we do it from there. So we first have to just be with ourselves, right? That's what you have to do to that inner child. You have to be with them. I mean, the primary intention of a psychotherapist is just to affirm the patient's experience. Like everything's okay, unconditional positive regard. So somebody's telling you what happened to them. And maybe the story doesn't really add up. You can see there's some distortion in the story. They're not conscious of it, but it's some rationalization. But the feeling underneath the story is the thing. So when I'm talking with somebody, I'm listening to the words they're saying, but I'm also picking up on what's the emotional content underneath. And if you affirm the feeling, I understand why you'd feel that way. I can imagine that would be frustrating. That must have been painful for you. I get why you'd be so angry. I'm affirming the feeling. I'm not agreeing with the story necessarily. That's all we need. And once they feel safe in that, once they feel affirmed, then you can gently lead them to, well, maybe you have some, distortion in that story. There's some way you're not seeing it perfectly clearly. And then they're much more willing to open up to that. So we have to give the same thing to ourselves.
Is there also a case of like the memories? This could be completely bullshit, but I think I read somewhere where it's like 50% of our memories are completely untrue. Like they've been distorted in a way that we're now looking back at them and they're not actually the way that it unfolded the way that it did. And so what I'm thinking right now is like, are we able to then rewrite the story? Are we able to then kind of like re-understand and re-look at what happened to then have a different perception, like to have like a multi-perspectival view of what is going on, to then have the insight to move through it?
Yeah, well, I'll answer your question indirectly. Like for you and I right now, we're sitting here talking, right? And our brains are working and we're thinking about things that we want to say. But underneath, there's a whole communication happening, like in the field, right? So that's what's really going on. Like that's how we're really meeting each other, right? It's through the sensations that we're feeling in our bodies. It's through unconscious communication. Body language, tone of voice. That's how we're really experiencing reality, through the body. The mind then interprets that and creates a story around it, right? That's the first thing to understand. And that story is unreliable. That story is always unreliable. As I said, I listen to the story, but the story is not important to me. It's the emotional content underneath. So we do the memories. So if I'm working with somebody and they have a memory or they're not sure if that happened or not, it's not really important to me what actually happened. It's their experience of it. How did that feel? Because you're going to have a feeling and then you're going to interpret that feeling and create a story around it. I mean, that's what the world is, right? It's just all a reality show. But underneath that is people's emotions and feelings and perceptions and fears and anger, and all of that gets projected and turned into a story. And so what I'm trying to help people do is to stop identifying with the story, right? And get underneath to what's actually going on. And yes, then in that place, you can rewrite your story, because really you can create any story you want. Yeah. And that's really the power. Now, that's a hard place to get to, but reality is really whatever you choose to look at and the meaning you make of it. That's all it is.
How?
Yeah. Well, if I look at you and I see unconsciously, I see my father, right? I'm going to have all kinds of unconscious judgments and projections onto you. And that's going to impact how we relate to each other. But I'm going to think that's reality. I'm not in reality. I'm in projection. I'm in transference. Now, if I know that, right? This guy reminds me of my father, or all men in some way remind me of my father, I project onto them. And so maybe because my father wasn't around, I feel that men aren't going to like me, or I'm going to be abandoned by men, or they're going to hurt me in some way, right? So I might be projecting that. And that's going to affect how we relate to each other. That's going to affect my relationships with men. And it's going to affect how you are in relationship with me, because you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that vibe coming off me. And you may like me, but he's a little guarded. He's a little, and you may not even be aware of it, but we say, hey, let's get together for lunch, but you don't call, or it doesn't happen. Why is that, right? And so once you understand and own that part of yourself, you can sort of recalibrate, right? It's like, okay, I'm not always in reality. Like whenever I'm triggered, I'm not in reality, right? I'm projecting something that happened in my past onto the present moment. Like that's the first thing. Like in my relationship with my girlfriend, that's like a tenet, right? When we're triggered, we're not in reality. So the things that we are experiencing are not necessarily true. She said something. I'm like, you said this. She's like, I didn't say that. It's like, well, I heard you say that. That's how I experienced it. I am not a reliable narrator of my own experience when I am in my trigger. And so we have to be humble to that. That's a scary thing though, because then the whole foundation of your reality gets crumbled, right? And it's very hard to sit in that place. And that's why I love this work, because it trains you to sit in the place of the unknown, the not knowing. And in order to heal, in order to transform ourselves, we have to let go of what is known. I mean, this is the hero's journey. Yeah. Let go of what is known, enter into the unknown, right? Tolerate that feeling. Tolerate not understanding. Tolerate not knowing exactly where we are. Not knowing what's real. That's the hardest part. We don't know what's real. We have this orientation to reality, this framework, this mental model that we're attached to. It's our identity. It feels like who we are. It's the thing that keeps us safe, right? And we project that out onto the world, right? But once you start doing this deep inner work, all of that facade starts to crumble. The Maya starts to fade. And then where are you? And anybody who goes through a deep healing journey, they have to go through that phase. And it's deeply uncomfortable. You need a lot of support and grounding. That's why I love doing work in groups, because you have reflection. And I say that we need other people to hold us until we learn to hold ourselves, right? And so on the other side of that, though, we have choice. And that's really what I'm trying to get people to. Is once you allow that old mental model, that old framework that you had, once you're humble to the fact that it was formed in response to your childhood and that it's not absolute reality, and you move through that, then you actually have a choice. You can choose to decide, well, what do I want my reality to be?
Yeah.
Because it can be anything I want.
Yeah. Would I be right to assume then that the steps that one would need to take is initially there kind of needs to be this space, this subject-object relationship, so that I can see or have awareness of myself. So then it's like, okay, this is what's happening, or it's almost like I need to take my lens off, and then look at my lens.
That's
and
right.
Go, this is the thing actually I was seeing everything through. This is what I thought I was looking at reality through.
That's right.
So then I can change the lens, or realize that I don't need the
lens. The lens is arbitrary. I can make any lens that I want.
Yes. So there's the awareness of taking the lens off, seeing the lens for what it is, deciding and having the choice to then choose which lens do I want to put on, or is it about not putting the lens on at all?
Well, I think we have to have a filter on reality, right? I think there's some framework. We need an operating system.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
It's otherwise it's just all code. You know. So you can't escape that. I think in the human experience, you absolutely have to have an operating system. But that operating system was installed by your childhood when you were just open and vulnerable, and you had no ego self, and so who you are was simply what was reflected back to you, right, by your caregivers. And so that gets imprinted in the psyche, and then you go and you take that and you project that out onto the world, right? That's all. I mean, we're all projecting all the time. Like you're projecting onto me, I'm projecting onto you. There's no escape from that. It's just the awareness of what we're doing. And when you're feeling disease or discontent or you're suffering, you can be certain that there's something that's off about your lens, or there's some distortion, or there's something, in your past that's causing this distortion. And what is that thing in my past? Why am I suffering continually? Why am I in this reoccurring pattern? What is going on? It's not me. There's some mechanism in my psyche that thinks it's actually protecting me. Right? But it's not me, it's this mechanism. I got to get to the root of that. How did that mechanism get formed? What is it about? How does it work? How do I change it?
Really quickly, I love that you're joining us on the podcast. And if you haven't yet, I have a YouTube channel, which is our main hub. This is where we have all the episodes, so you can watch the conversations and join each episode to get all of the best content, the best insights. So click over to YouTube, go to the Christopher Dufey channel, as I would love for you to be able to join us there.
So two concepts I've been playing with in my mind recently was like, for me to be the best person I can be to best serve the world, I want to be able to lower my self-deception, and I want to be able to increase my contact with reality.
Right.
How do you think we best do that?
I mean, I think there's infinite ways to do that, depending on what you're interested in and your orientation. obviously I have my own bias because of the work that I do. I think you have to do the inner child work. I think you have to go into your past and understand what happened to you, the defenses that are created around that, the structure, as I talked about, the mental models that got created. You have to be able to look at them. And the issue with that is that requires us to go back and feel the feelings that the child was unable to feel. And we don't want to do that because it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And the child has a belief that if they feel these feelings, they will be annihilated or they'll go insane. And so when I was doing this work as a client, whenever I was asked to go into these places, that's how it felt to me. If I feel this, it's going to kill me. I'm going to be annihilated. That's how the child felt. So we have to be able to walk through that. We have to enter into the black hole. Right? People talk about it in a lot of plant medicine ceremonies. Like it's sort of a black hole emerges or a snake comes to them with the mouth open. The shamans will say, if the snake comes with the mouth open, go inside, right? Or with Jung, go into the cave. We have to be willing to go through that, into that black hole where we have the terror that we're going to be annihilated. And what happens, we come out the other side. And you can't know that. It's a leap of faith, and all healing is that, right? I mean, and all of life is that. I mean, you get married, it's a leap of faith. You have children, it's a leap of faith. You start a company, it's a leap of faith, right? And when you're trying to heal, it's a leap of faith. It's over and over and over and over again, and that's the only way to eliminate those distortions.
So, I see one aspect of what a character trait that I believe makes a good entrepreneur specifically is your ability to tolerate uncertainty. How can we better develop that skill or that trait to be able to actually tolerate uncertainty? Because ultimately, everything's uncertain.
Yes, yes.
And for example, something that's been recently I've been working through was how much is enough money? Right? For everyone, for myself, how much is enough money?
Yeah.
Because there is a level in which are you just accruing and, do you know what I mean, hoarding cash because it's maybe wanting to give you this sense of safety and security?
Yeah.
But is it actually safety and
Right.
security at the end of the day? Because everything could get ripped away. Do you know what I mean? Like, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but this could be my last conversation. I'm going to get hit by a car, do you know what I mean? Crossing the road after this conversation. Like, when it comes to that ability to tolerate uncertainty, how do we actually best develop that skill?
You have to trust. Are you willing to trust? Are you willing to trust life? Right? I bet that you imposed your will on life. Yeah, you went out and you got what you wanted, and you're really, really good at that, I bet, right? Like you're smart, you're ambitious, you're strong, you're clever. It's like, I can conquer and dominate this world. And that's a powerful thing.
But it has its limits.
It absolutely has its limits. And so what would happen if you surrendered to God, to life, to your higher self?
I struggle with that so much, David.
Well, of course, why would you trust? I mean, based on what you told me about your childhood, I can imagine that you developed a belief system that I can't trust life. Like, life is not going to take care of me. I'm not even wanted by my parents. So I'm in reaction to that. Okay, I guess what I got to do is I got to go out and crush life. I'm going to conquer. I'm going to dominate. That's the thing that's going to make me feel safe. So surrendering to life, to like, I'm going to let go and trust that everything is just going to come to me in some way. It doesn't mean I sit in the couch and eat Doritos and, law of attraction. No, you have to go out and do things. But that I'm going to trust that it's going to unfold in some way, that I don't need to control it. Because control really is the enemy of creativity. It's the enemy of life, and nothing in nature is controlled, right? And so are we willing to stay all the way in the present moment, right? And just be with what is here and trust that in that moment, I'm just going to figure it out as I go. And it's one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. I can't possibly know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, never mind 5 years from now. So all I can do is make the best choice in this moment. And if I do that over and over again, right, and tolerate that feeling of the unknown, like, I'm going to get what I want. But presence is the thing. But it's scary to be in the unknown, right? I mean, none of us like it. But as you said, those who can tolerate it, those who can stay in it, are the ones who are the most successful. But it's a practice. And so, you know, what I'd say to people out there who are unsure about what their relationship is to that, just look at the places that you try to control life. Look at the places that you try to impose your will on life, right? And that's the key. Why? What are you afraid of? It's all fear.
Yeah.
Everything is fear.
Yeah.
At the root of every single issue you have is fear. It's like, that's underneath it. Why am I trying to control things? Because I'm afraid. What were you afraid? What's going to happen? Like, if I kept asking you that question, if you just surrendered, if you gave your total faith in life, if you didn't have to control anything, what are you afraid is going to happen? What might happen? What's the image you have of what would happen? You know, that's the question. And you keep asking that question over and over again until you get to this core wound, which is something like, I'm afraid I'm going to be annihilated. I'm afraid I'm going to be annexed. I'm afraid I'm going to be alone. I'm afraid I'm going to be unloved. I'm afraid I'm going to be unwanted. And that is not something that the child can tolerate. They cannot tolerate that feeling, right? So we disassociate from it.
How do we best nurture and give our inner child the feelings for what, I'm talking to myself, he wants?
How?
Yeah.
Just deep compassion. I mean, how are you with your children?
Well, my next question wanted to be, how do I best not impose my shit onto my 4 daughters? And how do I take these learnings as well as a father to be able to serve and nurture and provide for my daughters as well?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because I very much want to be as cognizant as possible as to why I'm doing what I'm doing with my daughters.
Yeah.
And being like, is this something that is just not, is like, this is my shit getting projected onto my children right now because I don't want that to happen.
Right.
And so when it comes to myself as a father, how do I best not fuck them up?
Accept that you can't not fuck them up, and forgive yourself for it, and be accountable for it, and take responsibility for it, and listen to them and hold the places where they will eventually be like, fuck you, Dad.
Yeah.
You fucked me up.
Yeah.
Fuck you. And it's like, yeah, I got fucked up too. Welcome to life. This is your journey. You know what I mean? And I'm happy to hear you and stand in as you express your anger. I accept it. I'm not going to defend myself, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to like make you see it. No, you didn't understand how hard it was for me. They don't fucking care.
I remember Alan Watts in a lecture talking about how someone might say, oh, I messed up because my parents dropped me when I was young.
Right.
And then they'll go, oh, it's your fault you dropped me. And they say, oh, well, it's actually not my fault. It's my parents because they
Right.
And the story continues to unfold until we get to Adam or Eve and something else.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's the case. So for me, when I heard Alan Watts going through that lecture, I was like, it's about the responsibility of myself now.
Yes.
Not trying to pass the buck back down.
Yeah.
And how do I stop whatever it is that I'm doing that is incorrect or not as of best for everyone around me.
Yeah.
So that I'm able to kind of give them as best as possible.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're doing it. If you're doing healing work, you're starting to own your projections. You're starting to understand those places where you might want to control them, right? Yeah. And unconscious, like show up in ways unconsciously that might affect them, or you have like unconscious biases or judgments towards them that are very, very subtle, because children pick up on everything, right? And they are tuned to us. So if you or someone had shame about themselves, whatever it may be, the child, even if it's never said, even if it's never named, the child can feel that, and they're going to pick up on that, and they're going to then adopt that shame, right? They're going to then carry that shame. Even if nothing was ever said, there was no incident, they just feel it, right? Because they have to stay attuned to you. That's how they survive. The child's primary objective is to stay in favor and connection with the caregiver. So all of our stuff, they can't not pick it up, right? And embody it. So there's no escaping from screwing up our children. It's just, it's not a thing. Like, we can do our best and we can keep evolving, right? But there must be some cosmic plan that's beyond our understanding, that this is some necessary part of what it is we're doing here. And of course, we know, in your case, like, so if you did all this amazing work and accomplished all those things in some way in response to some childhood wounding, well, great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
You probably gave a lot of value to the world.
Yes.
So it's not all bad, right? Our gift often comes from the place where we're most hurt.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a logic to it, and that's part of what we have to accept, you know? And so, yeah, at some point, the children have to accept, we all have to accept, like, this is what happened to me. I can't change it. I can't go back and get the things that I wanted and needed. I'm not even saying that the child has to forgive the parent, but we have to accept what happened to us. This is what life is. And staying angry and resentful and bitter towards our parents is a recipe for a life of misery and suffering. At some point, we have to take responsibility for what happened to us. Otherwise, we stay a victim. And when we're a victim, we're powerless.
I want to jump in and say thank you for listening and supporting the show, as at the moment we don't run any ads on the show. And if you're getting value, if you're loving the show, then I invite you right now to share this episode. Share this directly to a friend or share it on your socials. And when you do share it on social, please tag me so I can personally say thank you to you. My social handle is @Chris Dufey. That's Chris Dufey, as it means a huge deal to me, as this show is about us coming together as a community to help each other grow, as I really do believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So take a screenshot, grab the link and share it with a friend that you think could get value out of this together. It will put a huge smile on my face and I very much appreciate it.
I remember it was after a psychotherapy session that a bunch of stuff came out, especially to do with my parents. Then my parents were actually up to come and see us as a family, and I messaged my mum specifically, and I was like, hey, can we just like get together this morning? And we had the most beautiful open conversation about a bunch of all of these things. That is what came up, and it was just, it was nothing but beautiful. That was the word that I was just like, that was the feeling. It was just us being able to come together and be totally open about all of these things, and me being able to be like, hey, like, this is how I feel. And my mother being able to open up and be like, this is what I felt, and this is what,
Right.
do you know what I mean? She perceived the situation as, and everything like that. Secondly, forgiveness has been, I think, the most profound thing for me to be able to go through. And whether it was actually expressing that forgiveness to the person, or me just going through the process of forgiving them and not actually, do you know what I mean, communicating that forgiveness, but I forgave.
Yes.
But then I forgave myself as well.
Yeah.
And that was like this, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
wow. That, like, I was holding onto something with such a fit, like there was an iron grip in my mind, and I just let it go. And it was like, oh my God, this profound relaxing and lightness started to come. And I think it's a G.K. Chesterton quote. There's the reason angels can fly is because they take themselves lightly.
Yeah.
And that was the sense and feeling that I got. And then it was only very recent, before I came on this shooting trip, was Sunny, our second daughter. She's 7 at the moment. One of her friends actually the parents were going through a divorce, and she was picking up a lot of the sadness and anger that her friend was going through as well. And my wife really picked up on this. And one afternoon she came home from school, everything was great, and then she was just like really sad. And what was really interesting was I accepted the sadness, and I was there to hold it, but I was flawed, and I was getting triggered like she's being a victim.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, don't play the victim. And it was like, because this was something I feel like I wasn't allowed to be able to go through. And that, one of my kind of like core wounds was like playing the victim. So I'm very aware of myself not wanting to play the victim. And I clearly was projecting onto Sunny, and my wife Lauren, God love it, it was incredible. It was probably one of the most profound parenting situations I've ever seen. Lauren just got Sunny, sat on the couch, held her, and Sunny just wailed for like 30 minutes. And I dead set mean like 30 minutes, just wailed, like let it out. And Lauren just held her and just supported her and just like held that space for her to be able to let that emotion out. And then after it, she was the Sunny that she is.
Yeah.
She was just absolutely amazing. And I said to Lauren after, I go, that was one of the best things that I've ever seen. Like, well done. Like, it was incredible to be able to hold that space for her and know to be able to hold that space. And like, while I was in the background, like twitching, do you know what I mean? Being like, oh my God, like, but then I saw what Lauren was doing. I was like, wow, that was really amazing. So.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah, it was fantastic for Lauren, and it was a great learning lesson for myself.
Yeah. That's essentially what we do at our workshops. We just allow space for people to feel all of that without the story, without the judgment, without even needing to understand what it's about. Just let the feelings through. And what I notice in the workshops is that once you give people permission, we know how to heal each other. Like that we actually heal in groups. You know, I remember this a great picture of a basketball player, a college basketball player, you know, just they're kids. And he had broken his ankle in a really bad way, like, you know, compound fracture. And he was sitting on the ground, and all of his teammates were around him, touching him, like holding his hand. And it's exactly what happens at my workshops. And I'm sure those group of men are not touchy-feely kind of guys, but when something happened where their teammate was injured, suddenly like something took over and they went to support and held his hand and touched his body. And that's all we need, right? We need to be held and witnessed and supported in our pain. And if we can allow it to come through, whatever it is, you know, it might, in this case, it sounds like it was pain and grief and sadness, but it might be rage. I mean, just as you talked about, just the ability to stand in front of a group of people and just like feel like I want to fucking kill my mother, or I want to kill my father or my wife or my husband or whatever it is, and just to let that feeling come through and let it be okay, to not put a judgment on it. It's just energy. It's neutral, right? And just to let it come through. And if you do, that's going to take you somewhere else. It's always going to bring you back to wholeness. It's like it's an energetic system, right? And if we have blockages, you know, stuck emotions, it distorts the flow of our energy, which distorts the intelligence that energy has. And so we know what it feels like to be in a flow state, how good it feels, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. Where's the block? What is there that you're unwilling to feel? You know what I mean? And can we help you feel that? And if you do, if you're willing, if you're able, with the support of the entire group, like something's going to come through and you're going to be whole again. It's not complicated. It's actually very simple. We're designed to do it. We've just forgotten how.
You said before, like wanting to kill, do you mean others? Suicidal ideation's been something that has arisen for me frequently throughout life. What's that wanting to kill yourself?
I don't want to be here. It's too painful to be here. So I'm going to leave. That's it. I mean, what else could it be, really? I mean, I can imagine if you felt unloved and unwanted as a child, there was a part of you that said, I don't want to be here. Why would I want to be here? This is terrifying, right? And that gets imprinted in the psyche, right? And it becomes a belief, like it's not safe. This world is not safe.
You know what came up for me when you just said that? I had this bubbling thought that came up. I was like, what's the point?
Right, what's the point? Yeah, what's the point?
What's the point? Why suffer through this? Like, what's the point?
Yeah. Listen, to the child, that's a very rational position. To the child who's unwanted, unloved, or even hated, that's a rational position. What is the point? Why do I want to be here? This is nothing but suffering. You know, so it's like when somebody comes to me with that, I'm very sympathetic. Like I completely understand why you'd feel that way, right? And, you know, working with that is it's not easy. It takes time because you have to allow that aspect of them to come back gently. And they probably have a lot of rage, right? If you're neglected as a child, I mean, people think, well, can a 6-month-old have rage? Well, have you heard a 6-month-old scream at the top of their lungs? Like, yeah, they do. The organism, of course, as I said earlier, like, it's going to respond to negation or neglect with rage. Now, eventually they have to cut off from that, right? But that rage is locked in our body. And so it's like that rage will take you to the fear, right? And as I said earlier, that's the source of it all, right? Like, if I'm willing to feel my fear and own my fear and know my fear and learn to be with my fear, right? Then I can begin to exist here in this world. But if I don't, right, I'm always going to be making choices in life that are going to help me avoid that fear. And think about how limiting that is, right? And of course, we all know it's like, you know, face your fear. It's like, okay. It's pretty hard to face your fear. Like, it's like, especially if you've been programmed in a way that you feel like this fear is going to like kill you or annihilate you, which it would to the infant, which is why they disassociate from it. It's just not, it's not tenable. They can't let that energy run through their body. But so it's a beautiful story with your daughter that she probably couldn't have felt that on her own.
Yes.
She needed to be held. She needed the container, right, to allow that feeling to come through her. Otherwise, it would have been too scary. Like, it would have taken her out of control. And that's not something she would probably be willing to do. But once she feels held and nurtured, right, and safe, then that energy can come through.
It's interesting, I think my daughters are absolutely incredible, and their awareness of themselves blows me away.
Yeah.
Because very much of the time, they'll be able to say, like, I just have big feelings. I just have big feelings. And it's not that I'm trying to get them to put a word to it or anything like that. And it's just like, I have these big feelings, and it's kind of like gives us the space, like, okay, like, doing. But what comes up for me as well just now, and as you're speaking, David, is a lot of this, we're just wanting to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I just want to be seen.
Yeah.
Because from that and me being like, oh, like, you see me. And so I'll give an example of this is, my wife and I have been married for a bit over 11 years. And after kind of like this chapter change and this stuff that's kind of unraveled over the last few months has been very interesting, because I thought we had a good marriage before. And then we kind of like went through this hard stuff, really hard stuff that I thought could never happen. Now it's like we're at 100 times better than I ever thought it could be. But what's really interesting is, I think for the first time in a very long time, I'm now seeing Lauren for who she is now today, not this story and this backlog of like all of these other years that we've been together. And she said she's now seeing me for the man that I am today. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like we're completely re-meeting and re-dating as well. Like, there's this like, just this sparkness that's going on, and we're both like, this is incredible. And just this want to just like be around each other and just like talk and have this time, because over the last 10 years, there has been a lot of, it felt like, I said to her, it's felt like we were heading in the same direction, but we're on different tracks. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was playing this role, you were playing this role, and we kind of had to just get through what we had to get through to be able to come to this point now. And it's like we're seeing each other for the first time in a really long time. And God damn it feels good. But I also don't want to lose that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want there to be, and I had this epiphany as well. For love to be there, I think there needs to be curiosity. Because if I had always this curiosity with you, David, there's this newness, this essence, this presence that I can always be giving you, rather than the kind of like this previous story that I've always had.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, when we first met just before, like, I had this intentional thought of like, I just want to open my heart and completely open up and accept you. I want to give you my absolute all, my absolute presence, and accept you for who you are right now. And I want to try and keep that as well. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the question?
I think it's not really a question. It's more of a point of the importance of seeing someone for who they are
Yeah.
now.
Oh, to be seen.
And that being
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah, absolutely. We all need to be seen. I mean, when I'm in a fight with my girlfriend and, you know, she's blaming me and I'm blaming her, we're activated, we're triggered, we're in projection, we're in our defense.
Yeah.
I can end the fight, or she can end the fight, the moment I'm able to come back to myself enough and just to say, even if I don't agree with what she's saying, even if I think she's totally wrong, to say, I understand why you'd feel that way. That makes sense, right? In that moment, she feels validated and she feels seen. And as soon as I'm able to say that, or she's able to say it to me, the defense drops,
Yeah.
and we're able to come back into connection, right? That's all we need. I mean, well, look at children. Daddy, look at me, 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 right? They say that all the time. We need to be seen because, as I said earlier, like, that's how a child learns to know themselves, right? Which is why it's very, we know that it's not healthy to be alone because there's nothing to reflect back who we actually are. We need other people, right, to see us. And again, that is foundational in the work that I do. As I said, it's validating people's experience and seeing them, just seeing them. And most people, or a lot of people, they've never been seen, right? And people can't see themselves or don't trust their version of themselves until it's affirmed in some way, right? It's a very hard thing to just like, I see myself, I know who I am, completely separate from the world. We need that validation, right? Which is why we need other people. So it's like, yeah, it's deeply healing to just be felt, understood, and seen. And we all need that. And again, like, I'll say that. I just want you to, you know, in fights, I just need you to see me here, right? Or I come home and I'm telling her some story, or she's telling me something that happened. Like, all I'm looking for is just to be recognized, like to be felt, like so my experience is acknowledged in some way. And once it is, then I can relax, I feel safe, and then I can actually look at what's happening, right? And that allows me more movement, more flexibility, more perspective in seeing things clearly and resolving whatever it is that I'm trying to figure out. I can resolve it more easily and with more accuracy.
What most fascinates you about this work?
What most fascinates me about this work? That every single person at their core is a powerhouse. It's unbelievable to me, the things that you see in my workshops. People will come in, they're scared, they're small, you know, and you can see that they've been that way all their lives. You know, they're, just because you see it in their body language, it's like they've been withheld all of their life, right? And then to see them come alive in the workshop, to begin to express themselves, and to see the power and intelligence that emerges from them. That is the most incredible. It never doesn't amaze me. And I have doubts, like, I don't know if this person's gonna be able to get there, you know, and then I have to check myself. No, you know, you gotta believe in everybody. And every time, man, like, people are capable, all of us are capable of just huge greatness that's inside all of us. And everybody knows that, right? Everybody secretly has this belief, like, I'm fucking powerful. Like, I can do the things that I want to do. I can create the things that I want to create. And so, I'm just trying to help people access that deepest part of them, to kind of clear all the distortions, all of the pain, all of the fear, to go back into the childhood and, you know, undo those things. And that can take a process. But underneath that, you're trying to get to the core, to their higher self, this sacred place, this divine place, and where they can just, you know, be big and huge and bright and brilliant and loving and fierce and all of the things. There's everybody is capable of that in some way.
That's beautiful. I really, really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
This conversation has been utterly fascinating. I've enjoyed this so goddamn much, David. You are a beautiful human being, so thank you for this. How does anyone, myself included, find out more about what it is that you're doing and participate?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, davidsutcliffe.com, and from there you can find everything. I have deep feeling workshops. That's the core of my work right now. I have a partner that I work with. Her name is Angela I. We have a studio here in Austin, Texas, and we're running workshops on the regular, and we've got a training program coming up, and I do all kinds of online virtual stuff. But it's all at davidsutcliffe.com.
Amazing. David, thank you for being you. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate you being here today and taking the time to come here. This has been amazing. I very much want this to continue. You're incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I really, truly hope that you have enjoyed this. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so, because it would be a bummer if you'd miss out on the amazing episodes that are going to be coming. And one of the best ways for you to be able to support the show is to leave a review and to be able to share it out on social. And if you do share it out on social, please tag me. My handle is at Chris Dufey. That's Chris Dufey, as I would love to say a personal thank you for you sharing it out and for you to joining us on the show as well. And as always, thank you so much. I feel privileged, I feel thankful, I feel grateful. I feel really blessed being able to do this and being able to have you join us as we figure this stuff out that we call life at the end of the day, and being able to do it with amazing conversations that we do here in this show together as well. So I'm wishing you an amazing day, and I'm really looking forward to us coming together in the next episode.